Good afternoon. My name is Helen Kardiasmenos, and today I'm going to present to you about VR and AR in the K-6 classroom. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So what am I going to do in this session? I'm going to start with outlining virtual and augmented reality and then giving some examples of what this looks like in a real world context as well as in a classroom context. I'm also going to look at the curriculum links between augmented reality and experiences that we might be creating or fostering in the classroom for our students. I'm going to provide some access to some resources, and I'll also take questions at the end. So I'm going to start with outlining what augmented or virtual reality is. And essentially, this is using technology to superimpose information onto a real world environment. So intersecting the real world and the digital world by adding a digital layer of content. This digital layer of content is accessed through a trigger image. So this might be through a QR code or through an object like a merge cube or a t-shirt, or it could be the space itself. And using a camera-enabled device like an iPhone or a mobile device or an iPad, the user can access this digital layer of content and create that augmented or virtual experience. You can see along the bottom, there are some different examples of trigger images or trigger spaces that are creating that digital experience. The one in the middle is probably the most versatile for classroom use, which is Quiver, colouring in page and app that I will outline further along in the presentation. Now, increasingly, we're seeing this form of technology used across a wide array of different industries and associations. So in retail, virtual and augmented reality is used as a way of trying before you buy, to give consumers the ability to try things or test things out in their space and make informed consumer choices. So examples here are the Sephora Virtual Artist app or IKEA, where consumers are able to try products on themselves or in their space and then use that to determine whether they want to proceed with purchasing the product. Another way that augmented and virtual reality is increasingly being used is through entertainment. So Pokemon Go is probably the most famous of examples of this. So it was a game where people would catch Pokemon in their real world using the Pokemon Go app. Another such example, which is more targeted, I think, for children, is the Harry Potter Wizards Unite app, where you catch wizards in your space using that augmented reality experience. And one that people are most familiar with is that superimposing of digital content on photos or videos that you might take in your Messenger or in your Snapchat, or in WhatsApp, or other apps that create that kind of experience, like the Tooth Fairy Cam. Another area which we're seeing the increasing use of augmented and virtual reality is in healthcare. And in this particular field, we're seeing its use in mostly two different ways: for education, both for patients and future doctors. So we've got an example here from a Specsavers where we're educating people about healthcare or eye conditions using that digital virtual experience of the eye. The AccuVein example is another way that we're looking at using virtual reality for diagnostic information. So this is used by healthcare professionals to diagnose or identify blood vessels for blood draws or other conditions. And then the other example we have here is the AED4U app, which basically will, when you scan an environment, pinpoint the nearest locations of defibrillators. But what does this look like in the classroom? Well, like integrating any technology, AR and VR in the classroom is a tool, and it's a tool used to enhance and support learning. So in the K-6 context, this is quite effective, particularly when we're integrating across all the key learning areas. And some of the benefits that we found in using VR and AR in the classroom is things like increased student engagement in tasks, but also the development of fostering empathy, towards characters or people, and making those real world connections through giving the students experiences that they might not otherwise have in a real world context. In terms of curriculum, there are lots of rich curriculum links in using VR and AR in the classroom. And these amount to both digital technologies outcomes and ICT capabilities. So when we're looking at our ICT capabilities, we're looking at investigating with ICT, creating with ICT, and communicating with ICT. So when we're using virtual reality and augmented reality, our students are actually experiencing all of these aspects of the ICT capability continuum. In terms of the digital technologies, we're really tapping into our data and digital systems outcomes here, with giving students the opportunity to explore how digital systems work and also create and explore data within a digital system. So what does this actually look like in the classroom? Well, there are different forms that augmented or virtual reality take for a classroom use. So one particular lot of examples are things like objects or toys. So this includes clothing like the Curioscope t-shirt, or colouring in materials. Some of these are commercially purchased, others are free, like Quiver, which is the example in the photo here. There's games and toys that you can purchase. Orobot is the example in the photo here, which is a globe that has a variety of trigger images on it. So when the student scans that image, it gives them information about that part of the world. And also cards. Again, you can purchase these or you can print them freely online. VR and AR books are other examples where students are flipping through the books, and there are different sort of trigger images on different pages that connect to what's happening in the text. And I'll also give you an example later on in the presentation on how students can create their own augmented reality books. Sites, stories, and apps. There's quite a number of these that are becoming more available and free for classroom use. So these are just some here, some that I've used, some that I know other people have used, and they integrate quite nicely into key learning areas across the K-6 context. Things like Nearpod allow you to embed digital and virtual experiences for the students within a sort of slideshow, whereas others like Enter the Room or Scene Cam, students will use a camera-enabled device like an iPad to access those experiences. And then we've got tools, so things like the Merge Cube, which is this one here, and also QR codes and apps that have that feature inbuilt in them for students to use. Finally, we've got spaces and robotics. So KaiSclan is a wonderful emerging robotics company from New Zealand that have incorporated augmented and virtual reality experiences within their mats. So the students will access an augmented and virtual reality experience when they scan their mat, and then they can control a robot on that mat and see that being controlled in virtual reality. Minecraft connects quite nicely with KaiSclan, so students can create their own experience and then superimpose it on top of the robot in KaiSclan. And other sort of creation tools include Merge Dig, which again works with our Merge Cube, QLoan, which allows students to scan a model they've made and apply it into the virtual space. And then more complicated ones like Metaverse and CoSpaces, which we'd be using with our older students. So I'm going to quickly go over a couple of these and give you some examples of what this might look like. So the Merge Cube, so it's a small foam cube. It's got a variety of codes superimposed on each side of the cube. So what happens is the student will use an app called Merge Explorer, scan the cube with the app, and then a digital experience will be superimposed on the cube, and the student will get to hold the digital experience in the hand, like our Terraforming Earth example over here. So there are lots of different freely available cards within the Merge Explorer app, and these connect quite nicely to the different KLAs within the primary school context. So some examples of ones that I've used in my teaching context, Mr. Body, which is our example here on the left. I've integrated that quite nicely with PDHPE, with science and through literacy as well. Students would scan the cube and they'll have a human body there, which they can click and touch and learn different features of the human body. So exploring our language forms and features, looking at adjectives and nouns to describe different parts of the body, and then connecting back to our science and PDH curriculum. In the middle here, this is a solar system experience. So students in this example were exploring different aspects of the solar system, each particular part of the solar system. So you can see the sun here. If I click on the eye next to the sun, I'll get some information about the sun. So the students would then do some reading and comprehending of that information. And then we use that information to create an informative text about the sun using our language forms and features, focusing on nouns and adjectives as well as sentence structure within that context. The last example over here is with some younger students in year 1. They were exploring sound and sound waves. And so using the merge, we accessed one of the cards, which allowed them to look at a sound wave in real time, manipulate it by changing things like frequency and pitch, and then watching what happens visually on the merge cube, but also being able to hear the difference in the sound as a result of modifying those things. Another great example is Flipgrid AR. Now, Flipgrid AR is a free app. A teacher sets up an account, they set up a response question, and then students respond with a video recorded response. Once that's done, the teacher can print out the QR codes of the responses and then attach those QR codes to the students' work. Other ways that this one can be used is by the teacher as a way of providing verbal and visual instructions to printed material. So over on the left here, I've got an example of a support material that I had for my students in one of my coding classes, and they were able to scan the QR code that I'd created in Flipgrid AR and see a video of me talking in a little bit more detail about the code or the pins. If we're looking at space as a theme, here are some different ways that you can use different VR and AR experiences to explore that theme. So we've got our cards here on the top left-hand corner, where our students are scanning a card and it's bringing up the planet and they're learning about that planet. We've got our books, we've got our Kai's Clan robot experience using the Mars mat. So they have a particular Mars mat that allows students to visit virtual Mars base and control robots in that space. And then we've got some freely available apps like Planets or Skyview, where students can hold up their device to the sky and then be able to sort of see what stars and constellations are in that part of the sky. If we're looking at the human body, our Curioscope t-shirt, again, scanning the t-shirt triggers that VR experience, and the students can see what sort of things are in that part of the body, and that can be supplemented with our VR book here on the brain. If we're looking at the living world, again, a variety of different freely available apps. Some of these, like Leaf Snap and Plant Snap, allow students to go out into their school, into their garden, take photographs of things that go onto a database, and it identifies what particular plant that is or what particular leaf that is. Over on our right-hand side, we have Quiver. Again, it's a free colouring app. So the students, you download the page, you colour it in, and then using the app, the student scans it and it brings up that virtual experience of what a plant cell looks like. The question marks can be clicked. So it's an interactive learning experience, and the students can learn about the different parts of the plant cell through that experience there. Other wonderful example is WWF Free Rivers, where when you hover the app over a place in your space, it creates an ecosystem that the students can control and manipulate and learn about the river system and the water cycle and things like that. So our last app that I'm just going to introduce you to is Enter the Room. This is a wonderful app. I wouldn't be using this with younger children. I'd be focusing this on more stage 3. It is an empathy task app, and it takes place in the room of a child who experiences war over a 5-year period, and you actually see how this child's room changes over 5 years as their country goes through this kind of war process. So it's a really interesting empathy activity and creates that virtual experience for students to experience what it's like for a child coming from that context. The last couple of examples I'm going to share with you are around creating VR in the classroom, and this can be done as simply like this from kindy up until stage 3. So with this particular example here, we're using a Flipgrid AR and book creator, and the students are creating a book. I've also used it as a teaching tool where I've created a teaching book and then recorded myself reading this book using the code provided by Flipgrid AR. I've attached it onto my book, and the students can scan and listen to me read the book, or if it's a book the students have created themselves, they can film themselves reading it, attach the QR code on, and then family and friends can watch them read their text. With older children, we can use apps like Metaverse to create interactive virtual experiences. So this one here is a quiz game. This taps in quite nicely to our stage 2 and stage 3 content when we start to introduce some of those concepts like branching and conditions. So in this particular example, the student creates almost like a game or quiz game that takes place in virtual reality. And within Metaverse as well, students can actually upload their own images or make their own creations and then upload it into the app and create a virtual experience with their own object, which really ties in quite nicely with that design thinking framework when we're structuring our work around that design curriculum. So that's all for me. Thank you very much. Feel free to contact me via Twitter if you have any questions, if you want some more information or you want to, share some ideas. I've also got a Padlet of VR and AR resources that you can access and share and add to, just as a repository of resources for educators across the K-6 context. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.